Welcome back to the Rules and Tools podcast. Today, I'm blessed beyond understanding to bring back with you one of my brothers. Today, he's not here with me in person, but he's zooming in on this chat. He is a survivor of satanic ritual abuse, and so today I talked him a bit. We've had some other conversations around this topic of sacred geometry and what's going on, all that kind of stuff. And I just kind of asked him, and so I'm just introducing you guys to what we were going to be talking about today. Is I asked him the other day, I said, what do you know about this 6-7 thing that everybody's kind of talking about these days, and all these kids are saying, and my kids, at their school, what's going on with all that? And so, in just kind of scratching the surface of that conversation, I started chatting, and it was like, whoa, there's a lot to this. And so I wanted to record that and bring that to you guys. And so thank you so much for being here. God bless you, brother, and really appreciate all your time. So thank you.
Thank you for having me, Jay. I'm really excited to do this, but I mean, in a kind of disturbed way, because the
Mm,
more I kind of dug down into this whole phenomenon, the more kind of you know disturbing it got for me. So excited in a relatively speaking kind of way, I guess, to talk about this too.
okay. Well, with that being said, like, where do you want to start? Do you want me to just hit you with a question, or you just want to dive into what you said? Because I mean, like I said, you and I had kind of had that conversation the other day about where does this come from, and you went into just a litany of stuff. And so, if I just hand you that ball, you want to just run with that and say why numbers and why math and why geometry?
Well, yeah, that's a great question to start with, I guess. And then I can run with it, but you know my tendency to run a little bit too far with the ball. So just jump in whenever you want, as loudly as you need to shut me up. Okay.
Heck, I
Um, but yeah, the numbers thing. So that's kind of where we got started with this, and I'm just looking at my notes. I've made some notes here, but so then what do we have here with this whole 6-7 thing, right? Well, for
yeah,
one, you started with the numbers. That's kind of an obvious question. It should be for all of us, right? Because the numbers, you would think, well, we're kind of my daughter was explaining to me, oh, it's just about the height of a certain basketball player. So I researched this, and as it turns out, if what as an old guy, kind of not an outsider's perspective in that sense. In other words, I have not experienced this phenomenon through the lens of TikTok day by day as it's happened. Okay.
right,
So, but what it's telling me is, this is directly from Wikipedia. The slang originated from the drill rap song Doot Doot 6-7, in which American rapper Skrilla raps, I know he dying, etc. Oh my God, 6-7. Right, so this is where it originated earlier this year, and then it went through this whole kind of process of getting kind of distributed into the broader culture, especially kids. Remember that,
yeah,
that's really important to know, right? But back to the numerology. So there's this at the spiritual level, there's an intent behind the numerology. Okay, just like there is in the drawing of a pentagram or using certain symbols. Um, and so that's from the spiritual. There's also an intent to get. See, one of the most important elements of this whole 6-7 thing is there's what they achieved was what they wanted to achieve, which was a collective participation in satanic ritual. It's so let me make clear what I'm saying, Jay, because basically, in order to get for the demonic realm to gain power, it requires consent, permission of some kind. That's kind of the rules of the game,
yep,
because God is sovereign over everything. So God must grant permission, essentially, to Satan or his team of the fallen angelic hierarchy, all the way down to lesser demonic entities and etc. There must be a permission. It's like if I open a Ouija board and start messing around with it, I'm giving a kind of a permission. I'm giving a consent to
yeah,
say, kind of, come on in. So same principle. And so that consent can be given subconsciously. I don't have to know consciously, be aware that what I'm doing is participating in a satanic ritual. It was the same principle back in COVID with the masks.
Mm.
It was without realizing necessarily what they were doing at all. Most people on earth were unwittingly participating in at least one primary aspect of collective satanic ritual, which is the dehumanization that comes out of mask wearing. It's absolutely a piece of every single memory I have, of ritual abuse. And so in the same way, if we can get, hundreds of thousands of children and young people chanting 6, 7 or what have you, and thinking to themselves it doesn't mean anything, it's just some silly, thing named after, started by a basketball player, not realizing that the numerology actually is effective, right? It means something, just like the geometry in a pentagram is effective. It does something. It means something. If I walk around with a T-shirt with an upside down Baphometian pentagram on it, right? I'm giving a kind of similar to if I wear a cross necklace, right? I'm kind of making a statement about what I'm giving permission to and what I'm consenting to. Either
Yeah.
way. Okay. So in the same way, if I'm chanting 6, 7, right, it's a participation in something that's
Mm.
going on collectively, is kind of what I'm trying to say here. So that's part of the whole deceit mechanism of this thing too. And so the numerology specifically, let me flip over to that research page. But so in numerology, the principle is, the sum is what's most important. So you have two numbers, 6 and 7, and how you would reduce them numerologically is to add 6 to 7. And so you get 13. So 6 in itself is significant, 7 is significant, but it's the sum of those numbers that's even more significant. Let me read you so I don't kind of fumble, jumble the meaning here. Let me read you what someone else has written about this. And this is someone who is an expert in Vedic astrological numerology. Okay, so this is a quote from this gentleman. Um, he's saying the real power lies in the sum, the code of chaos, the power of 13. When the two conflicting forces of 6, I guess, which represents structure, and 7, which represents mystery, are merged, they don't produce peace, they produce transformation. 6 plus 7 equals 13. In numerology, 13 is the number of radical and complete rebirth. In the tarot, the 13th card is death. It's death with a capital D, which does not signify physical death, but the necessary destruction of the old to make way for the new.
Mm.
Okay, gears going now. It
Mm.
is the ultimate agent of change, often perceived as dangerous or unlucky because it forces things to end. The 6-7 meme, and this is a quote, okay, from an expert in numerology. The 6-7 meme is the modern incantation of the number 13. By collectively and endlessly shouting this seemingly arbitrary phrase, I'm adding the word seemingly to his quote, children across the world are performing a simultaneous, unconscious ritual. Notice his wording, right? To break down the existing structure of language and logic. The purpose of the meme is to mean nothing, so that the fixed material meanings of the adult world can be dissolved. I mean, he goes on. There's like pages of stuff. I'm just sharing some of the most shocking. Another quote is he says it signifies the necessary destruction of the old to make way for the new.
Yeah.
Another quote is a 6 is a fusion of old order, which is what 6 represents, and new mystery, which is what 7 represents. it invokes the transformative power of 13, leading to societal chaos and the eventual construction of a new foundation, like read New World Order, right? So we're kind of like in really right down the rabbit hole right out of the gate. I hope you're okay with that, Jay.
Well, no, that's the whole point. Well, because the fact that this phenomenon has burst onto the scene out of nowhere,
Yeah,
and and the fact that you're saying, when my son went to a recent basketball clinic, and there's kids, little kids, that are
right,
running around. He's 7 years old,
right.
and he's at this basketball clinic, and one of the coaches there, at the end of them doing a basketball drill, decides to bring all these 7 year olds around them, and that's what they choose to shout, as like that's their high five, that's their done.
Yeah,
That's what elevated me to go, there's no possible phenomenon in the spiritual or the physical realm that makes any sense if there's not something behind it. Because
yeah,
as somebody that has led and done things with people and in big groups of collective, to get something to motivate and to do, I can tell you it goes back to Ephesians, where it says
mhm,
there, we do not wrestle with flesh and blood, but of the principalities, the powers, the rulers of the heavenly realm.
right.
The hierarchy of these things is intense, right? And so
Yeah,
if they can get worship without being with a person unbeknownst to them,
right.
that is one of their highest forms
Yeah,
of
yes. And actually, it's interesting. Can I jump in with that idea of
yeah,
worship? That idea of worship, I that was actually one of the outcomes of my research too. And the thing with worship is we got to remember Satan can only steal worship through trickery and deceit. So that's part of what's going on. It's definitely an element of it, right? And you see it as a father in the targeting of children, right? You
yeah,
see kind of malicious intent, very, very upfront and personal, um, and and so it's kind of the same along the similar lines of like you know Anton LaVey, the head of the Church of Satan in America, is quoted as saying, I'm going to not get the exact quote, but basically he loves um, the fact that Christians send their kids to participate in Halloween because something about it's the only time of year when Christians participate in a satanic holiday without even realizing it, or something along these
yeah,
lines. It's this same kind of concept of subconscious participation collectively in satanic ritual. And that worship that is kind of comes out of that is really on one level the only kind of worship that Satan is ever going to actually get. If you look at Isaiah 14, his intent is to usurp the throne of God, right? That's
mhm,
Satan, challenge to God. And so if he wants worship in the place of the worship that really only Almighty God deserves, how can he attain that? He can only really do that maybe in the hearts and minds of men, right? If he can kind of con job Eve and Adam into, kind of seeing things his way,
yeah,
right? Then there's a form of a consent which kind of can develop into a form of tacit worship. So that's Satan's kind of biggest modus operandi of stealing worship, especially from the innocent. Like makes him no happier than to have kids doing this kind of thing, right? Without even realizing. And especially, you know, and Christians too, of all ages, right? It's
yeah,
like, it's there's a certain part of witchcraft which is really the emulation of their father, the devil, right? Who is the father of lies. But part of it is the art of deceit, right? That's a huge part of. Um, and so, and if it might be a good time to transition into the video itself. I don't know if you ever seen this video that this of this song that this thing is based on.
A bit. I saw like the guy wearing a mask and stuff like that. So,
It's horrendous. Like
okay.
it's and so, but it's very illuminating as to kind of the deeper intent. So, like if we assume, okay, if we're scientists and we have a hypothesis, right?
Hmm.
If we assume our working hypothesis that when this artist, this musical artist, sat down with his team of people, to make this video back probably sometime end of 2024, because I think it was released in March of 2025, I believe, this year. Let's assume, in other words, that there was a kind of intent behind this whole thing from the beginning. So we can assume that the choice of content and symbolism and hand gestures and even lyrics in the um, in the song and in the video made from the song are intentional, right? And then so then you can kind of, now we got 9 months went by or whatever, and we can reverse engineer and kind of rewind the tape a little bit and say, oh, okay, that's how we got here. And in between there is this basketball player and all this other stuff, on TikTok and other social media platforms, kind of really pushing this thing out into culture, and several famous people and celebrities and politicians, and really a pretty big, widespread effort to kind of spread this meme,
Yeah.
this incantation, as wide and far as possible. And so, if we presume where it started was with intentionality, and if you look at the video, which I did, I watched the whole thing. I'm trying to find the page of it, but no need to. I wrote down like second by second, frame by frame, but you don't even need to really go into that much um, depth with it. But and the lyrics themselves are just utterly. This is where some of the most disturbing stuff comes from. I'm trying to find my page. Here we go. The video itself, and this
Yeah.
is, stuff that's meaningful from an occult perspective. This isn't me being paranoid. This is like how they do things. But it's 2 minutes and 29 seconds long. So numerologically, that's also reduces to 13. 2 plus 2 plus 9. So there's again, if we're assuming there's an intent behind from the beginning, right?
You're
The
right.
whole thing. Okay. So then at 5 seconds into the video, you see this kind of like really nicely designed kind of graphic-y logo that represents the name of the song. And it gives the name of the song. It has some imagery, which is like it looks like a AK-47 or AR-15 or some kind of assault rifle that's kind of made to look like a shark. Okay, but we don't know why. And the name of the song, and then in the bottom left corner is the number 6 7, surrounded by 18 little pentagrams, little stars, 5-pointed stars. And so the number 6 7, the first thing I noticed were there. If you've ever seen like a Declaration of Independence,
Yeah.
1776 kind of graphics, if you look up on say Google Images, the kind of graphic stuff you're going to get, that kind of in the similar font style to the actual quill work on the Declaration of Independence, which was, of course, um, it happened in I think July 1776, if I remember right. Um, and so the symbolism in the graphics and the opening 5 seconds of this video are very intentionally kind of drawing this connection between the 67 on the bottom left and the idea of 1776 and the Declaration of Independence and the founding of America, right? Basically, is what's being pointed to. And then you have the stars are very much the 18 pentagrams around it. 18 is also 6 plus 6 plus 6, right? So it's another little kind of hint. And the stars are very much kind of hinting towards like we're talking about America here. But some reason it isn't 76, it's 67, right? So same numerology, same sum, 13, but there's something I don't quite understand, but it's ringing a bell. There's something about this reversing of numbers too. So anyway, so right from the get-go in the video, it's very self-consciously kind of saying, this is what this is about, right? And it's about the numerology. And so then you have, from the very beginning of this thing, just less than 30 seconds in, he's making I don't want to do it, but it's like a very particular, 666 sign with both hands. And this is kind of keeps repeating this, looks like kind of, people would probably assume, oh, that's just a gang sign or what have you, kind of gangster rap type of feel, right? But it's very clearly, the 666 sign with both hands. And, he's, of course, kind of dancing along to his beat, so he's moving the arms up and down in
Yeah.
particular ways, right? And we'll go back to that as well. But so right from the gate, we know this guy is a Satanist. He's telling you right away that's what he is and what he believes as an artist through the signs and symbols, right? And then through the lyrics too, which are utterly disgustingly shocking when you actually can figure out what he's saying. And we know right out of the gate that he's referencing something about 1776 and the founding of this country. Okay. And then we also know, here's what I'm going to read from Wikipedia as well, is there was a linguist who came out and specialized, like a scholar who specializes in African American linguistics, who said about this song that 6-7 is most likely a reference to 1067, which is the police code for reporting a report of death, like a homicide. And I found out it's also, so it is that, it's also the police code for stand by for next message, right? So if an officer says 1067 on his radio and signs off, he's telling the dispatcher, I'm standing by for my next communication. Okay.
Okay.
And so, but it's also means a 1067 is a death. So, and then when you go through the lyrics in this video, so in the video, he keeps doing this 666 sign, and he keeps repeating this word bip, right? Which is like, sounds kind of silly, but you got to bear with me here. Again, so I actually took it seriously. He's not just like making up sounds and whatever. This guy's saying something. And it actually, in the Urban Dictionary, this is this gets so crazy. Well, okay, there's another word he mentions in the video, baby shark. In the Urban Dictionary, baby shark is defined as, here's the entry, the end of the human population. That so you can't make this stuff up. So there's meaning being communicated, in other words, in all this stuff. So as we read through the lyrics, some of this I really don't know what it means, but I'm sure it means something. But shades on, I'm bull with the glasses. Bro say 'cause he a savage. That's the first thing I noticed that really I know what that means, right? And then so many dead, so many ashes. And when I read that, I knew what he's talking about, right? Because this is a reference to the burning of victims in satanic ritual sacrifice. It's what it's, they celebrate ashes in Satanism. And because there's a whole belief system wrapped up in the phoenix arising from its own ashes, all this stuff. The belief is that they're liberating someone from, this entrapment in the physical realm. And so if someone is, burned alive, for, just to be blunt, then that produces ashes. Or if evidence is being hidden after someone's been ritually sacrificed and they're being burned, that's ashes. So he's really very explicitly saying, not only is he a Satanist through the symbolism, but that he is referencing the amount of ritual sacrifice that he is acknowledging has been happening. I don't know if I assume he's talking about maybe the recent past or a large period of time, but that then you make sense of this word savage, right? The savage is a pagan idolater, which means someone who sacrifices human beings. So that's what's being said. And then the next lyrics are, "You ain't catch that, I can't pass this." So there's really two thoughts being communicated. You can't catch what I'm saying, right? In other words, he's saying, like all occultists, he
Yeah.
knows that the hidden meanings he's conveying are kind of going over the audience's heads. And he likes that. That's kind of, they get off on this, right? And I can't pass this is a reference to the law of silence in the occult and Freemasonry. He's not, it's my lips are sealed, basically. I can't just come out and say what I'm telling you. I have to divulge it through symbols and hidden meanings and references and numerology, right? And so he's actually very self-consciously as an artist referencing in his own lyrics what he's doing. And he's even more kind of, metacognitively, to coin a word, like kind of stepping outside of the process and analyzing it even one step removed further, because he's kind of mocking the fact that his audience, who's buying his concert tickets and his records and watching his videos, he's saying, "You're not getting this at all, right? At all. I know it's going right over your head." So, and then there's a lot more that he says in the lyrics, but what you see in the imagery is you keep seeing this other person with like an automatic machine gun. It'll show this and then immediately cut to the rapper, Skrilla, every time right before he says this word, this bip, right? And so you start to see from the context, he says, "I just bipped right on the highway." He's talking about his track hawk, his Jeep sitting in the driveway. He's talking about having just shot somebody randomly on the freeway and celebrating this, right, in the video as some kind of satanic ritual sacrifice, very intentional kind of, and he's mocking his very audience, who he's basically saying to them, "You're kind of too dumb to understand what I'm saying here," right?
And what I'm up to and what I've been doing and all that.
So it gets very disturbing, and the baby shark thing, it also has another reference that is even, I really can't repeat, but
Yeah.
it's a sexual one that basically has to do with gang rape. Uh, here's some other lyrics, right? That we know that over the context, when he says this word bip, bipped, he's talking about killing somebody, because he comes out and says that. He says, "Send my shooter on a hit. I'll middleman a whole body. Straight thuggin', free blick, fightin', triple homicide," right? So he's very overtly saying, "I'm talking about homicide, right? I'm already fighting a triple homicide charge. May as well kill somebody else," is basically what he's saying. So there's one level on this where this is like just kind of ugly gangster rap, but then there's a whole other level where it's actually teaching satanic ideology, and also, like all spellcraft, it's important that there's an element of defiling the participant, right? So you're being defiled by this violence and talk of killing, even though it's not explicitly showing it. It's basically celebrating random murder in the name of Satan. And he's telling you that that's what he's doing in the imagery through the symbolism and the 666 signs and the lyrics. So he's telling you right from the get-go, the artist who Wikipedia says this whole phenomenon started because of, is telling you, I'm a Satanist, this is what I'm celebrating, and this is what I'm asking you to consent to participate in. And through this that's why it was important that it didn't just end. A lot of music videos are satanic. A lot of songs and a lot of whole bands and artists are openly satanic. This was more than that, right? It's not just the most satanic video. It's not even that. There's a lot of, Taylor Swift videos and other major artists that are a lot more explicitly kind of Freemasonic and occultic and satanic than this one. This one, you have to be watching it to see the hand signs, and you would just think it was a gangster rap if you just kind of watched it without paying attention. Not that I watch gangster rap videos, but there was really nothing special about
Yeah.
the imagery. Whereas other, look at Lady Gaga, and every time she goes out in public, she's wearing something that very kind of clearly is saying, "I'm a Satanist." You know, um, but this wasn't that. But what was important about this was what happened after,
Hmm.
right? I believe from the beginning, you can see the intention. So you can see the kind of macro plan, the trajectory over the last, say, 8, 9 months.